Hello and namaste, dear viewers. Welcome to a journey to the heart of one of the world's most dynamic and intriguing economies, the Indian economy. I'm Don Abhinay, and over the course of these lectures, we will delve deep into the intricacies, challenges, and triumphs of the Indian economy. India has a remarkable economic journey, from predominantly from an agrarian economy to becoming a global powerhouse in information technology, manufacturing, and more. India's transformation over the decades is nothing short of awe-inspiring. In this lecture series, we'll explore the economic history of India before 1950 and after that, from its post-independence struggles to the economic reforms of the 1990s that unleashed a wave of growth. We'll discuss the factors behind India's economic successes and the persistent challenges it faces today. And before we begin, remember to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. And if you find this series valuable, don't forget to share it with your friends or fellow learners. So, without further ado, let's dive into the first chapter of our Indian economy lecture series. Let's start with our Indian economy before 1950. The first lecture is the transfer of tribute. So, what is this transfer of tribute? It is the drain of our India's resources and the transfer of our resources from India to England, either by getting nothing in return or getting only disproportionately a smaller part of such transfer of resources. The first person who raised this issue of drain of resources from India to England was Dadabhai Naoroji in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. It was published in the year 1871 itself. In that book, Dadabhai Naoroji explained the causes and consequences of such drains on our economy. The main argument in his theory of drain was that a significant portion of our India's national wealth was transferred to England. This theory explained the drain as the main cause of poverty in India. According to him, the drain consists of two elements. The first is arising from the remittances by European officials of the savings and for their expenditure in England for various wants both there and in India, from pensions and salaries which are paid in England. The second arises from remittances by non-Europeans. This indicates that in order to meet the requirements of the economic drain, India has to export much as compared to imports. Dadabhai Naoroji has observed that there are five things which are responsible for our economic drain. The first one is the remittances to England by European employees for supporting their families and education for their children, which may be considered a feature of colonial system of government. And the second one is the remittances of savings by the employees of the East India Company, as they preferred to invest in home than in India. And the third one is the remittances for purchasing British goods demanded by the British employees as well as purchasing British goods in India. And the government purchase of stores manufacturers in Great Britain. And the last, the interest charges on public debt held in Britain, which excluded interest payments on railway loans and other debts incurred for productive works. As a result of the political, administrative, and commercial connections established between India and England, the government of India had to make huge payments to the people of England. All these payments were known as home charges. And these home charges consist of interest on public debt raised from England and annuities on account of railways and irrigation works and payments to British employees too, employed in India, as well as pensions to retired employees worked in India who are now living in England. Many Indian leaders estimated that this amount of drain differs from person to person and year to year. The RC Dutt estimated that one of India's net revenue flows out of India every year. This is estimated to be around 20 million euros in early 20th century. And MG Ranad has declared that more than a third of the national income of India was taken away by the government in one form or in another. And Dadabhai Naoroji claimed that approximately one fourth of the money which is raised in India goes to England, which is approximately 12 million US dollars every year. And William Digby has also estimated that the annual drainage was 30 million euros per year. There are many more estimations and calculations made by many great people. Recently, an economist named Patnaik, in her essay published in Columbia University, said that British drained out 45 trillion from India, which has hampered the ability to come out of poverty. But our past doesn't stop us from growing. And we Indians are hardworking people and we have a passion for education, which has made our economy the fifth biggest in the world. And in purchasing power parity, we are the third biggest in the world. But our per capita income is less than 4,000 US dollars per year. We need to work hard to increase that. And this is the end of this lecture. And in the next lecture, we will discuss the effects of drain in India and in England. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Indian Economy lecture series. In the previous lecture, we started the Indian Economy series with Indian Economy before 1950 topics. We started with the drain of wealth. We discussed the opinions of few great economists like Dadabhai Naoroji. And in this lecture, we'll discuss how the drain of wealth impacted India and also the Britain, and how the drain resulted in the destruction of India and how Britain prospered with the money which it looted from India. So let's get started. Let's start by discussing the effects of drain on England. A huge volume of drain of resources and capital from India to England resulted in a better standard of living in Britain. The drain resulted into huge investments in England's agriculture and industry after 1750. Literally, they are responsible for the agricultural revolution and industrial revolution in 1750. After 1750, the England attained the takeoff stage of its growth. It grew by utilizing the resources drained out of India, sucking India's wealth. Huge amounts of remittances from British officials received by Britain households. Remittances means there are some Britain workers working in India. They send their money back to Britain to their families. And also the Britain workers who are retired after working in India get their pensions from the Indian budget itself. They invest that money in Britain, which empowered those people to devote on construction of roads, railways, and canals, even new inventions, and also for bringing rapid challenges in all different sectors of its economy. Effects of the drain on India. Huge drains of resources from India to England had resulted disastrous effects on our Indian economy and also on our people. Huge amounts of these resources, which could be invested in our country, were snatched and siphoned off to England. Huge public debt undertaken by the government and its payment of interest necessitated increasing tax burden on the people of India, which were highly regressive in nature. Let me tell you the estimates of Dadabhai Naoroji. The tax burden in India during 1886 was 14.3% of its total income, which was very high as compared to 6.93% in England, according to Dadabhai Naoroji. And moreover, these tax proceeds were mostly used for making payments to British creditors and not for the social services and welfare activities of our Indians. This type of drain of tax proceeds from India impoverished the agriculture industry, and trading activities in India, and largely responsible for our economy's stagnant stage during the 18th and 19th century. Although few Britain economists say that they took responsibility of maintaining law and order, but centralized political and judicial and administration, roads, railways, educational setup, etc. But the extent of draining out of resources was too excessive, leading to stagnation of the economy and poor and miserable condition of Indian masses. National leaders of India analyzed the various harmful effects of grain in different ways. As we discussed in the previous lecture, as by Dadabhai Naoroji's opinion, the drain of resources was the major sole cause of India's poverty. Naoroji, R.C. Datta, and S.N. Banerjee were also of the opinion that the drain had created harmful effects on the level of income and employment of India. The drain has resulted loss of generation of income and employment in our country. R.C. Datta had also tried to establish a casual relationship between the drain of resources and the improvement of the peasantry, the farmers. He argued that drain was paid merely out of land revenue. Hello everyone, welcome to the third lecture in the series of Indian economy before independence. So this is the third video and the last video for theory of drain. Basically, this theory of drain was divided into three phases. The first one was merchant capital phase. It begins from 1757 to 1800. And the second one was the industrial capital phase. It starts from 1800 to 1900. And the final one was financial capital phase from 1900 to 1947. So in this video, we're going to discuss deep about this broadly divided these three phases. So first, let me tell you a little bit of history. Why are you using this word, the drain? I mean, the theory of drain and drain of wealth. Who created that word and what's the need of it? So during the last part of 19th century, there's great controversy arose over the question of drain between our Indian leaders and Britain leaders. Our nationalist thinkers, Indians, developed the theory of drain as we discussed in the first and second lecture before. So the main cause for creating this drain was to analyze the main cause of poverty in India. So the drain was the main reason for poverty in India. And the nationalist Indians believed that a lot of India's wealth was sent to England without getting much in return. And that's true. The first person who talked about this drain was Dadabhai Naoroji in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, which was published in 1871. We discussed about it in the first lecture itself. So he wanted to understand why this was happening, how much wealth was being taken, and what it meant for India. There were other economists too, like R.C. Datta and others. They also talked about this drain, and they say that they're saying it was like England was sucking away India's resources and wealth for its own benefit. They called it the economic drain. Dadabhai Naoroji's idea of drain was later explained by others like Justice Ranad and Maulik Sarkar, who said it was the main reason why the British were taking over India's economy. So now we'll get into the merchant capital period and systematic extraction of resources from India by the East India Company. During this time, the East India Company devised cunning policies to siphon surplus from Indian agriculture, facilitating the transfer of wealth to Britain. Okay, let's expose some typical methods they employed. First, they implemented permanent and temporary settlement systems across India, fixing exorbitant revenue targets. Fixing high revenue targets to be collected by the Presidency of Bengal. This meant substantial wealth extraction, effectively silencing Indian voices and financing British operations in India through these revenues. Secondly, administrative extraction was rampant. while British officers and subjects given free rein to exploit India through bribery, gifts, and the sale of trading rights. Lastly, the East India Company shamelessly levied war damages from Indian princes, while hiring mercenary soldiers at the expense of very kingdoms they were meant to protect. There's a historian called William Digby. His calculations reveal a staggering drain of wealth amounting to 100 crore pounds, 100 crore pounds, not rupees, between 1757 and 1815. This figure underscores the magnitude of economic exploitation inflicted upon India during this period. So during the industrial capital period, which was from 1800 to 1900, the British were kind of mean to India. They didn't want to they didn't want Indian industries to grow, but they wanted everyone to buy their stuff. So let me tell you how they do it. First, they made sure British stuff coming to India had lower taxes than stuff from other places. This made British goods cheaper and more popular in India. Then they didn't really support Indian handicraft, which were like handmade goods in India. This made it harder for Indian craftsmen to make money. Also, they messed with the values of Indian money so that it was more expensive to sell stuff out of India and cheaper to buy stuff into India. It was kind of sneaky. All because of this, India's money stayed the same, but industries didn't grow much. Instead, the British focused on making money from things like tea and sugarcane farms by not helping Indian industries. Then, in the financial capital period, from 1900 to 1947, things didn't get better. The British kept taking money from India in different ways. They took money from India and invested it back as British money, making sure they always got paid. They also made India pay for things like wars and rebellions, which was really unfair, right? There were also some tricky things going on with money, where the British made sure Indian stuff sold for cheap, while their stuff sold for more. And they paid Indian workers really low wages, which wasn't nice. In total, a lot of money, about 85 crore pounds, was taken from India between 1900 and 1939, which was a lot of money back then. So these times were tough for India. These times were tough for India, with the British taking a lot of money and not really helping Indian businesses grow.
So, in the first lecture of the Indian economy series, we have discussed about the transfer of tribute, which is the first topic in Indian economy syllabus of IIT JAM Economics. So, in the next lecture, we'll talk about deindustrialization in India. With that, we will be completed with Indian economy before 1950 subtopic, and then we'll go to another subtopic called planning and Indian development. And this lecture also completes the syllabus of drain of wealth of the CUET syllabus, which you can see there. And in the agriculture part, we have deindustrialization debate, which we're going to talk about in the next lecture. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this. See you next time. Thank you.